Mike, we're connected to YouTube now. I made you the host.
All right, thank you. I think we just, Steve, we just made quorum.
Excellent.
So we can get started.
Excellent. Good morning and welcome everyone to the April 7th meeting of the Capital District Transportation Committee, Planning Committee. I'm Steve Iacchetta. It's an honor and privilege. Thank you for allowing me to serve as chair. I hope everyone's enjoying the wonderful spring weather and happy spring holidays. It's my introduction. We used to do self-introductions, but I guess we're just a picture on a screen for today. And welcome back to the office, to CDTC staff, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So economic recovery appears to be underway and we may get back to normal sometime soon. So that's my intro. Are there any visitor issues at this time wishing to address the planning committee? At this time, it's an open floor. Just speak up. Going once. Going twice. Hearing none. We'll advance to the item 3, adoption of our prior meeting minutes. We last met on February 3rd. The minutes were distributed in advance and on our excellent website. Thank you to staff for updating the website. All materials are there individually, including the minutes of February 3rd. Would entertain a motion to adopt these meeting minutes to make them official. Are there any corrections or revisions to note from the February 3rd Planning Committee meeting at this time? I accept the motion or revisions. Any comments? Michael Valentine, did you find any typos? Grammar? Technically correct?
This is Sean and Colony. I'll move those.
Any revisions suggested? So we got a motion and a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mark. All in favor, please say aye. Raise your hand. Otherwise indicate affirmation.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Any abstaining or opposed? Please speak up, unmute if there's any concerns. Going once, going twice. Item 3 is hereby adopted. Thank you. Moving into the presentation section of our advanced agenda. Today we have Carrie Ward and Nelson Nygaard on the City of Albany Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. This is an exciting continuation of our past efforts, and we're getting great press on the Skyway and other initiatives. But let's hear from, is it Carrie and Nelson at this time? Are you ready?
Marichelle, I think you should be good to start. I don't need to interview.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marichelle Fon. I'm a principal at Nelson Nygaard, and I was the project manager for the Albany Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. And with me, there's Alison Fletcher. She was the deputy project manager for the project. Not sure, can I share my screen? Is it okay?
I just made you co-host, so does that work?
Yep, perfect. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify what we're going to show is an executive summary, but the full plan is available on the project website, and CDTC has copies, and as well as the City of Albany. So we have structure. It's a brief presentation, and it's a structure as shown in the slide. So first, we're gonna go. We're gonna share the vision and goals of the plan, so setting the stage. Then we're gonna show a brief summary of the existing conditions, and so what are the key challenges that we saw doing that. Then we're gonna explain what we did as the community engagement, and we'll continue with bicycle and pedestrian recommendations, policies, programs, and procedures, and finally the implementation considerations. So we worked during, that was a 1-year-long project, and we worked closely with the Citizen Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. So everything you see here was shared with them and agreed with them. We started with defining, as I said, the vision of the plan. So we agreed that more of Albany should be served by walking and biking networks that are welcoming, intuitive, and continuous. Walking, biking, and transit are viable transportation options that support a sustainable future. Streets feel safe and comfortable for all people who use them. And finally, sorry, I need to move the images. A culture of awareness and compassion supports everyone who uses Albany streets. We also put a strong emphasis on equity. So we agreed with the agenda of the City of Albany in regards to equity. So promoting safe walking and cycling also promotes equity. Non-drivers include people with lower incomes who cannot afford the car, children, young adults, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Walking and biking promote much needed mobility options to these people. And also this plan aims to close gaps in walking and biking infrastructure where it would have the most equitable impact. The goals that we agreed for the plan are as follows. First one, improve walking and biking networks so they are viable transportation options. Second, incentivize elected officials, policymakers, law enforcement officials, and roadway designers to take responsibility for including walking and biking as part of the transportation system. Third, provide a shared awareness of and responsibility for street safety among all users of Albany streets. Fourth, educate community members about the pleasures and concrete benefits that arise from incorporating walking and biking into their daily lives. Fifth, prioritize walking and biking to create resiliency in Albany's transportation network. And the last one, delineate potential private and public funding sources for a strong bicycle and pedestrian network. Moving on to the key challenges that we discovered during the existing conditions analysis. So first I wanted to mention that as SAPs for this project, we had Creighton Manning who led this part of the project. And what we did for that, first we reviewed existing plans, existing projects and approved projects for the city. And then we worked with the GIS data set of the city as well. What we saw, so we have some maps to show you here. So first we looked at how difficult it was to cross some segments of the streets of Albany. And basically that's the ease of crossing analysis that we did, which is based on the number of lanes that people have to cross, the traffic volumes and the speeds of the streets, and how close a signalized intersection or a mid-block crossing with a median is. So what you see here, so the orange and red segments would be the ones that should be improved because these are long segments that don't provide a safe place to cross for pedestrians. We also looked at the sidewalk inventory and we saw that there were some areas without any sidewalk on the western part of the city. Again, we looked at the crossings that were wide. So there's a lot. So some of the streets in Albany are really wide and they represent an issue for some of the users to cross. We also looked at the 2009 bicycle master plan, and we saw that some of the proposals were were unsuitable for all ages and ability, and we looked at the level of stress to come to this conclusion. And the level of stress, some of you may know, but that's an indicator that looks at the presence of bike infrastructure, the width of the bike infrastructure, as well as the width of the street and the traffic volumes and the speeds of the volumes adjacent to the biking infrastructure, if any. That's a level of stress. So the higher it is, the more stressful it is to be biking on the network. We also looked at where were the key destinations and attractions. And we saw that there were a lot of gaps, especially connecting downtown with the western part of the city. And last, we looked at the crash data of the last 5 years, and we saw that cars are more likely to hit people walking and biking in areas with higher environmental justice sensitivity. And I'll pass it to Allison now.
Thanks. Like we had teamed with Creighton Manning on this, we also had the help with Bayhan Planning for doing the public engagement during this process. So it's really important, in addition to this desktop analysis that we've been doing here, understanding the user experience of everyone that lives these systems on a daily basis. So we had many different means of reaching out to people, especially given the circumstances of the pandemic. This is a 12-month process. The city also and CDTC assisted in going out of their way to also have additional meetings to try to find different ways to reach people through phone. We had lots of online surveys. We had an online web presence. And we had a number of advisory meetings with the technical and the citizen committee as we went along. We also hosted 2 quick build pilot projects on the street in the fall to have the chance for people to discover this as a drop-in in person by seeing some examples of testing things before you build it on the street. Some of the things we also teased out through this, next slide, Marichelle, is just, what are the key barriers to walking and biking? So if we know what the challenges are through the analysis that we're doing, what is the perceptional factors in the user experience contributing to that? And how does that shift and prioritize how we're doing the design of the facilities that come through the infrastructure? I'll skip ahead a couple slides, Marichelle. So then you'll see in the plan, there's a number of maps of our particular recommendations. And one of our goals, especially as it relates to the bike network, is how to get a complete network for different users on different hierarchy of different types of streets. So the yellow lines here are a key facet of this plan, which is traffic calmed bike boulevards through the neighborhoods to connect residents between where they live and other key areas in the city. The blue lines are the protected bike infrastructure, trying to get this wherever we could in the city in a complete network to invite that and more inclusive, all ages and abilities cycling throughout the city. On the next slide, we walk through some of the national trends and challenges and studies and analysis in terms of, on the next slide, what is more inviting to people and what's also relating to this level of stress and comfort in the experience of cycling. And next slide. And then what do these facilities look like? We wanted to provide a lot of concrete examples of how to envision, what the standards could be for these different levels of infrastructure and how a different layer of network of these systems throughout Albany could fit into the streets. And 2 slides forward. There's also a number of different things about, how to go about selection and prioritizing different types of facilities as they go on the street. And next slide. Then there's a section on the proposed pedestrian network. There's an inventory of the city of where are sidewalks existing, where are they missing, is it on one side of the street or the other? What are the volumes of those streets? And also what's possible for where to add them given the right-of-way constraints. And so we've laid out some plans for how to enhance the network respective to that. Next slide. There's also going to be some maps in there that speak to the ease of crossing, the number of things in terms of what's the distance from curb to curb, how many lanes are there, how much volume is there, and also what are just the standard best practices that should be integrated into the intersections to make sure that these are more predictable and safe for those people on foot going across these intersections. Next slide. And next. You'll see in this one, there was also some considerations about, proximity to transit stops and other things. Everyone's a pedestrian at the first leg of their trip relative to those. And then we also looked at factors like traffic calming, things that benefit everybody in terms of safety in the streets, not just the people walking and biking, but everybody getting around. And an important thing of this on the next slide is that, traffic calming features are also something that can be very important, a mix and match in terms of what's suitable for bike boulevards to invite the safer traveling on the side streets and these connected lower stress networks. Next slides. And, the infrastructure is not everything. So there's also an outline of different policies and procedures and programs. Education and enforcement especially are a really big part of the picture of making sure the system works and is comprehensible and usable and understandable for everyone. And on the next slide, there's some example programs like, policies on speed. We know that speed has an impact on the likelihood of whether you might survive a traffic incident or not. And so, what does the city of Albany want to do respective to that? And on the next slide, we also talk about, wayfinding programs. If you have these bike boulevard networks, you might have to wiggle from street to street and how to do that signage system on the street and what are the national standards for that. And next slide. And then another thing is just tracking and metrics and, assessing where you are. This process gave us a litmus of where Albany has been in the past recent years with all of their planning efforts and where you are today. But we also laid out some potential locations for collecting bike ped counts in the future so that you can get that understanding on a more regular basis of, is the system supporting more activity? Is it shifting the routes that people are taking? And so we set up a system for continuing that ongoing work and tracking the city's progress. And lastly, the last chapter of the report is about just various implementation considerations. Like I mentioned, there's some project scoring. One of the things we're thinking about with the project scoring is, how to get the goals and the values, baked into what projects are happening when, and if those shift based on, is safety shifting? Are there equity measures in the city? How can that relate to how it prioritizes how the money is spent, and also what's feasible and implementable, or where are the grants available for the projects themselves? We also talk about how to align it with other processes and agency coordination, and how to seek funding, and what are the key factors in getting that in terms of timeline and the performance factors that are expected of those. So that's it for our presentation. Hopefully we have some time for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison and Mayor Excel. Any questions on this presentation on the bicycle pedestrian master plan for the city of Albany at this time? But slide 27 had proposed bike lanes. Is there a goal to connect those? It looked like there were a few concentrated areas that may not have been connected. And is there a comparative analysis section to see how Albany fares with comparable cities? I'm familiar with Syracuse has dedicated green lanes. They actually paint their asphalt green. I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not, but warrants discussion, possible consideration. Any thoughts on that? Connecting bike lanes and green lanes for designating bicycle, and any thought of skating also? I'm an avid inline skater, and that's great fitness activity. It needs to be segregated from bicycles to some extent in some areas. So anyway, just trying to get a little discussion forward. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there could be some branding to the systems themselves, to create some excitement around them, like what you're talking about in Syracuse. I think the national trend in terms of all the new mobility scooters, inline skating, skates are going off the shelves in the markets and stuff, is that they tend to occupy the bicycle infrastructure itself in most cities. That tends to be where the practice has been heading. So that's discussed probably on a pretty minimal level in terms of how that's discussed in the report, because we also didn't get very much feedback with respect to the demand or concerns about that during the process. But yeah, there's definitely still some key gaps in the network. There's a couple dotted lines in the map about facility or alignment needs to be determined, because there's some tricky trade-offs in a couple of particular segments that we worked hard with CDTC and the city on working through those, and some of it needs further analysis.
And adding to that, we paid attention to the connectivity piece. So we mapped in the same map, there's the trails network, and they're color differently if they're paved or not. But we tried like pretty hard, like with a lot of back and forth to make sure that also the western part of the city, which seems to be less connected with all the modes, right? There was a way to get there, despite some of the difficult barriers, especially road barriers that represent for bicyclists and pedestrians. But I think the branding and the wayfinding should be a big piece of or outcome or a big recommendation for that, because what we heard during the outreach, the first meetings I remember from the citizen advisory committee, is that some people suddenly they walk somewhere not far from downtown, and they don't know where to go or where's the safest path for pedestrians. And we heard that from people with some disabilities. And I think that maybe the infrastructure is there, but people don't know which routes they should be taking.
So is there consideration of the green painted pavements as Syracuse and maybe Manhattan, where else? I know it's done a few other places. Is that considered or not? And would you rely on only signage?
No, I mean, in some places they paint the whole protected bike lane green, but we were just discussing with Allison before this meeting that this comes with a maintenance cost. So maybe it's not needed to paint the whole way in green, but especially when there's a moment at intersections where the bicyclists don't know where to link different bike infrastructure in different road segments. In these places, we think it's important to paint or to put some kind of different pavement or some guidance for the bicyclists to know where they should link to the next segment, and also bike boxes. So there's a lot of recommendations. Bike boxes at intersections are recommended to be painted as well, so that it's clear where the bicyclists can wait safely and where not.
There's DOT regulations on this. Is Scott Lewenden still in your main office, Bob? Do you know? Scott Lewenden was a very avid or active bicycle pedestrian advocate, probably 10, 15 years ago. He probably retired.
He has retired, Steve.
Retired.
DOT signage, what is it? Bicycle emblems, or what's the DOT regulation, Bob? Any thoughts on that? For bike lanes?
I mean, it's a pretty broad subject matter, Steve, depending on whether it's a shared lane, you know, from share of the road type things to separate facilities, and of which intersecting with the road becomes, you know, literally another intersection that, you know, each one sort of needs its own treatment style. But with the advent of the solar panels has sort of really changed the game in terms of warning devices, though, of the cost relative. A lot of times warning signs, you had to get power to the site, and that was a big problem. But now with solar charges going pretty well, I think it's opened up the toolbox of being creative in terms of safety improvements and signing.
You're positive. Thank you for that. So is this a 20 or 30-year forward-looking master plan? What's the time horizon looking forward? Merrick, Strell, or Allison?
I would say normally it's a 10-year. It should be revised frequently. So what we recommended with the metrics in the recommendations is some things make sense to review them annually, right? The last plan here was 2009. So I would say in 10 years, this should be like looked more in detail, but maybe Carrie and Zach don't share this opinion. So I don't know what was the plan for the city.
Very good. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I had a question. What's your thoughts? We just started a pedestrian and bicycle study in the village of Ballston Spa, much smaller, 1.5 miles across. We have a lot of gaps in our sidewalks, you know, ends of streets, no sidewalks, corners, etc. Given that putting in a bike lane is a lot less expensive than putting in sidewalks, what's your thoughts on, you know, in the interim until you can get the funding to fill in the gaps on the sidewalk of people using the bike lanes for walking? What's your feeling on that?
I think there's been some experimentation on this front on how to transform shoulders with some bollards, playing around with markings, but a lot of this is in flux at the moment. There's a commenting process through the NUCTD on the MUTCD manual on what's going to be allowed in it, but there's definitely still a lot of cities across the country, you know, testing things out and experimenting with like wider shoulders that have bike ped markings and bollards in them. But it may not fit your context, but it has to be worked through.
Also, if you would move forward with this multi-use zone, we recommend a width of at least 10 feet if available, because if not, I mean, depending on the volumes of pedestrians and bicyclists, right? But 5 feet, it's the minimum for pedestrians. If you add bicyclists, then we recommend a minimum width of 10 foot.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? It's about 10 o'clock now. We want to move into action items. Any final closing remarks? Ready to move forward? Thank you for your excellent presentation. Item 4 on our agenda is a running story on fiscal constraints. Tip summary table 4 has been evolving, showing balance between the current year and out to 2022-23. We stay within generally 5% either side. Michael's going to lead us on this continuing discussion and refer to table 4, latest up-to-date version at the mpo.org website. There it is on the screen. So you ready, Michael? All set?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes, so this is really meant for information purposes, you know, so that everybody understands before any of the tip amendments that we are fiscally constrained under the guidelines. The only issue that we have right now is the third year, but again, this is the same as the last month. The third year will be the first year in the new tip update, so that'll be changed or should be changed when the tip update starts. So we are fiscally constrained so that everybody knows before we go into any of the tip amendments.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions on the overview, table 4? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Is that right, Michael? Item 5, are we ready?
Yep.
More? Okay. Item 5 is our TIP program proposed amendments. Are we doing this in order? A, B, and C? I think we've got time for Chris, do you think? There was a request for a revised agenda, but I think we're holding the 5A review at this time, Sand Lake Hamlet sidewalk enhancements.
Yeah, just Steve, just really quick, I want to talk just briefly about one project that's in the package when it comes to the a change in the tip amendment that was approved by project selection by DOT, the sponsor, and CDTC. We've been, you know, it's our practice to make sure the committee knows about these tip amendments that do not need planning committee action. So what I put on the screen, I think you have, is the information in your packet about tip project number R340. This was the project in Rensselaer County. Basically, Rensselaer, East Greenbush, and DOT decided to expand the scope of the project, and they're using mitigation fees to expand the scope of the project. So this is only for information purposes, but again, it's our practice to make sure that members know about all of these changes to the TIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions on this informational item? Rensselaer 340 is state pin 1089.79 intersection of US Route 4 and I-90 safety improvements using mitigation fees. It's a busy area. Seems going once, going twice. We'll move forward to the item 5A. Rensselaer 310 state pin 1760.34 is the Sand Lake Hamlet sidewalk enhancements. Also in the advanced agenda is Supervisor Nancy Perry on the line and can share a brief overview. Thank you.
The planning coordinator, Monica Ryan, for Sand Lake is on. Nancy Perry is not.
Monica Ryan, please go with a summary overview for our members. Thank you.
Sure. So we have been in the design phase of this project, and back in 2018, we did find ourselves with some fiscal constraints and had requested a scaled back project that included maintaining our sidewalk design and construction project in the hamlet of Sand Lake, the repair project for our sidewalk system in West Sand Lake, and then only design, or well, actually, we weren't even sure, but potentially just design of a multi-use path. All of this, and then removal of a project in our third hamlet of Averill Park due to some fiscal constraints. Over the course of design, we ended up completing the design of our multi-use path, which was one of the projects we did not feel we would be able to construct And at the same time, we were working with DOT on some of the repair work and curbing that was needed for these projects is all on state roads, Route 66 and 43. Everything, all of the improvements we were doing are on both of those state highways. So in partnership with DOT, they identified that they would help with the repairs in West Sand Lake, curbing and other identified repair work for that part of the project, which the town had originally assumed we would be partnering with DOT, not sure where that would end up, but that we would actually be paying for a good portion of that as part of this project and our match. In the end, we are able to get a lot of that repair work. DOT is going to be funding that. We did the design, we paid for the design as part of this project, but they are 100% funding the repairs to the system in West Sand Lake. And as a result, we wanted to relook at that funding for the multi-use trail path on 43, which was originally funded as part of this project. And we had done the design portion for. We are able to build, with the amendments we've requested, we'd be able to build 1,400 feet, I'm sorry, yes, 1,400 feet of that multi-use path due to the shifts in how things are being paid for in West Sand Lake, and putting that piece back in with just a $74,000 increase in our tip. We had originally, I think, requested 800 feet of multi-use path. We are now building a park network of trails on a piece of land in our nature trails in Averill Park, and working to try to get more walkability in Averill Park in other ways by extending the multi-use path another number of feet. We get to almost the entrance to where those pathways start, and it would connect up to that system, which wasn't even, it's been an entirely volunteer effort. And we didn't even foresee that when we proposed this originally, that if we extended the path a few hundred feet, we'd be at the point of connecting these two things. So with the addition of $74,000, we can get the multi-use path built and connected to a point where we could connect to a trail system that we have been working on a volunteer level in the hamlet of Averill Park, and ultimately be able to do something for that hamlet that otherwise wasn't going to happen as part of this project due to other town fiscal constraints. So there's a lot here, a lot of little parts that needed to be shifted, but ultimately that's what we're trying to do. And I have Creighton Manning hopefully on the call too, or on the meeting too, if we have really technical questions.
Thank you, Monica. Good overview. So the impact on our tip is it 82,000? Is that correct? Sheriff, I'm reading this right. It does not need to go to the policy board, but it's a minor issue on, so it's planning committee vote on this as a scope change for addition of the multi-use path. Any other questions for Monica at this time before we vote?
Yeah, one, Andrew Crusher, City of Troy. Just wondering, Monica, you had mentioned that there's still a little gap for connectivity. What's the hurdle there, and would it be a good time to include that as part of this project?
Actually, there's not really a gap. We have to cross, we will have to cross the road, and we are pretty much at a point where there is no gap. There's a ditching starts on 43, a fairly big ditching project or ditching situation. So we've carried the multi-use path up to that point, because after that you'd have to enclose ditches and do a bunch of things. But it works out that we're working with the property owner across the street to secure an easement so that we could get as close as possible to that point with our cross into the town trail network. If we cannot get that easement, we can run the town trail a little farther east, where we do have actual town access. It's just creating a more of a boardwalk scenario and more trail than we actually need. So we're hoping to just be able to efficiently cross in where the trail network ends. But either way, I think we'll be able to get the cross. It's just a matter of, we will have to have a crossing of 43 either way to get over there. But I think we'll be in good shape and won't have a gap ultimately.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Schedule on this, you reference a schedule change to the construction phase. Can you clarify that briefly?
Sure, yeah. We, last September, we were asked to obligate by CDTC or DOT to push this forward into 21, 22 for construction. We're actually ready to go and would really like to get this project done in 2021. So we'd like to go back to our original schedule instead of pushing it into 21, 22, which was requested. So we're just ready to go, and everyone's kind of chomping at the bit. So if possible, we'd like to put this back in this fiscal year.
Take advantage of good weather. Any other questions or comments before we vote on this? Entertain a motion.
Motion.
Who's that, Joe?
Andrew.
Andrew, thank you, Andrew. Second by?
Steve, I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. All right, all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Any abstaining or opposed? Please speak up. Make sure you're on mute. Going once, going twice. Item 5A is hereby adopted by the Planning Committee. Thank you very much, Monica and all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 5B, Chris Wallen will present on the Schenectady 242 State Pin 1760.42 Broadway, 1207 miles south of Weaver Street to 4th Street, Mill and Fill, enclosed. This was in our advanced agenda. Chris, you ready to present?
I am ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So this is a pavement preservation project paid for STP Urban. It was a standard tip project, not a set aside, such as some others. We are at the stage of PS&E. We have our final design, ADP, approved by the state. However, when we went through our final estimate, there was a sorry, I just heard somebody talking. There was a discrepancy in the amount. I sat down with our consultant, MJ Engineering, and we reviewed the discrepancies going through. A couple of factors that we point out in here are both the timing of this with asphalt prices. Last year would have been a better year. This year, not so much with materials, as well as the city wanting to do signal improvements on the corridor. We have done signal improvements such as these in the past on our Broadway and Gilderland pavement preservation project. On that project, the city also put up a city share. I've been moving forward under the Mark Kennedy guise that the municipalities are responsible for costs of upgrading signal equipment that is inherent to making the signals work and accepting the pedestrian accommodations such as push buttons and ped heads. So I asked MJ to break out those costs. They broke out those costs, and it came that the city needs approximately, I believe it was 175,000 in local share money to upgrade our existing signals to accept the new pedestrian accommodations. So I did put that in there as a city share. This is also similar to what's going on with our PSAP project, where we're doing some local share on that as well with regards to pedestrian infrastructure. And then there is a lot of curb ramps since it's an urban location that needed to be upgraded. So at every one of those where there's a curb ramp that's deficient, we need to upgrade it. So this is to add necessary funding to complete the project in my level to the peak ability so that we get the best product at the end of the day. And it's not just a mill and fill project, but a project that really enhances the corridor for the better of pedestrians and motorists. Steve, are you talking?
Sorry, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I gotta remember that mute button. Add a little levity. Is Broadway the site of the historic Erie Canal? Is that the right?
Broadway is not the site of the canal. I mean, Erie Boulevard, Broadway is, Erie is the canal.
That's right.
Broadway is adjacent to it for a portion, but it is a main corridor. It is actually probably one of the only corridors into the Rotterdam area. You know, whereas we have state union, we have many corridors that connect along what's essentially almost the BRT red line. The Broadway corridor is alone in connecting Rotterdam and the southwestern portion of the state to the city. So it's an important corridor, and one that has seen a large increase in traffic over the years.
Thank you for clarifying the context. Appreciate that. Any other questions before we vote on this item 5B? It's 271,000. Is that right? Fiscal constraint increase 271,000. So it's scope change, signal replacement, local expenses noted in the outline summary.
No scope change, Steve.
Item 5B should be corrected, Michael. Okay, got it. So this does not go to the policy board, and our decision will be the final determinant. Any other comments before we vote? Discussion? Hearing none, may I request a motion at this time? Anyone want to move it?
I'll move it, Steve Feeney.
Thank you, Steve. And second by?
I'll second again.
Oh, thank you, Bob. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any abstaining or opposed at this time? Be sure to unmute. Going once, going twice. Hearing none, item 5B is hereby adopted. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you all. And moving forward in our agenda, we're up to item 6, freight planning project selection. Michael and Chris Bauer can open up our discussion on item 6, freight planning.
Hi, Steve. Morning. This is Chris
Morning.
Bauer. I'll handle this part. And it looks like Mike already shared the screen, so thank you. So real brief here, we have some funding available to undertake one consultant-led freight planning project this year. And so to help select a project, we developed an online survey where we asked respondents to rank 6 freight planning initiatives. Those initiatives were from our regional freight plan and also things that have come up over the past few years from our freight advisory committee. So we sent that survey out to the Freight Advisory Committee and also discussed it at your February Planning Committee meeting. Compiled the results for the February Freight Advisory Committee meeting. Had a good discussion about it and narrowed the list down to 2 projects for your consideration, and I'll briefly describe those. The first is a regional truck parking survey. This was survey rank number 1, where we would inventory truck parking supply and demand, look at the factors affecting truck parking, develop a truck parking toolkit, and make recommendations to improve truck parking in the region. Truck parking, for those of you who participate on the Freight Advisory Committee know, this is a top issue regionally for our Freight Advisory Committee and also nationally, just about every level. The second is local delivery optimization. This was survey rank number 2. In this project, we would research and identify policies and actions that municipalities can take to support efficient goods deliveries, particularly in dense urban areas. This, again, as you know, has become more of an issue with increased local deliveries during the COVID-19 pandemic. What we're asking the committee to do today is to select one of these 2 freight planning initiatives that we will then begin scope development and begin the process on what will probably be about a plus or minus 12-month process once we get going. And it's kind of a brief overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the projects or the process.
Thank you, Chris. So discussion on these recommendations.
I would think that local delivery is now a hot topic because of the, pandemic, increase the volume of goods being transported that way. Just a thought.
Andrew Krushik, they're both very good recommendations. I feel compelled to defer to the survey rank number 1 just because it is the survey rank number 1.
Sorry, there's construction here at the airport overhead. I'm on the 3rd floor of the terminal. They're putting in some conduit. Any additional discussion before we vote to confirm the, I guess, regional truck parking study as the ranked recommendation, or is there further discussion? Speak up.
I too would voice my support on the regional truck parking study.
Very good. Are we ready to vote on this recommendation or further discussion? Anyone?
Steve, I'd like to make a motion to move forward the recommendation for the regional truck parking study.
Thank you, Sean. And a second by?
Andrew, second.
Andrew. And all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
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 And any abstaining or opposed to the recommendation? Please speak up. Abstaining or opposed? Going once, going twice. Recommendation carries. Thank you very much, Michael, Chris, and team. Okay, so that's freight planning. Item 7 is next. TIP application and evaluation update. And Sandy and Jen can guide us on this. Item 7. Sandy, are you ready?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Starting my video. So we provided the update in your packet on the overall process and where things are at with our TIP evaluation update. I'm gonna pass it to Jen first because today we wanted to focus on the merit score sheet proposals. So Jen, if you want to walk through that, and we'll discuss that, and then we can come back to the other items.
Sure. Okay, Mike. So if you want to share your screen, and then I'll just narrate and ask you to move a slide forward. Everyone has a copy of the recommendations, so electronically. And so if you want to follow along, I'm not going to go through every single recommendation, but just kind of provide an overview of how we came up with our recommendations and what kind of the major recommendations are. So if you can go to the next slide, Mike. Why update the TIP score sheet? We've adopted an updated long-range plan in September 2020. We updated New Visions 2050, and the TIP is one of the ways that we implement the major goals, investment principles, and policies outlined in the plan. Next slide. And many of you are familiar with this score sheet, but if you're not, what goes into the score sheet there are 11 categories. Each category is evaluated based on the proposed project's ability to help achieve a goal within a specific mode or program or New Vision's performance measure. It's a qualitative evaluation of proposed transportation projects. The qualitative score is scaled and combined with the benefit cost ratio to determine its final project score. And project scores are a tool to assist in prioritizing and ranking projects and programming the TIP, but they're not the end all be all of how a project gets on the TIP. Next slide. Okay, so what changes are we recommending? Next slide. We, staff conducted a sensitivity analysis. We chose a sample of projects from previous TIPs. We compared them, we compared their scores, and then we went back and changed some different elements of projects, like, made something beyond preservation instead of preservation, added a bike lane, took away a bike lane, added ADA ramps, different, small elements within a project to see how that affected the score and which categories may be more affected than others. So we based on that and discussion with staff based on feedback, we've received from previous tip updates, we went back and we went through the score sheet and we updated the format to create more consistency with how points are assigned and language. We did not add or eliminate any categories, but some you'll see are like slightly renamed, like accessibility. We removed ADA because really the objective is to assess how projects go above and beyond the ADA. We reduced redundant wording and duplication. We updated language to reflect current best practices, markings and designs, current technologies, and updated planning documents. So we wanted to update language to reflect planning documents like New Visions 2050, like the Local Road Safety Action Plan, and other plans that have been adopted since the last tip update. We also provide references to the state and or federal laws and programs that the criteria were inspired by. Next slide. So we think that the recommendations make the score sheet more consistent with our regional vision. So they reflect the New Visions planning and investment principles. We've updated the big ticket initiatives based on the most recent plan. And then we also updated the key regional priorities based on the more recent Capital Region Economic Development Council report. Next slide. And also consistent with federal and state priorities like the New York State Smart Growth Law, the Complete Streets Policy, NISDOT's Green Lights Program, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, and Federal Highways Alternative Fuel Corridors Program. Next slide. So if you we're open up to questions and discussion. If you are reviewing it, you can definitely send any comments to Mike and he'll share it with staff and we can continue to work on and discuss this. Sandy, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that?
Nope, that was great, Jen. Thanks. The score sheet is, I believe, in your packet as well as posted on CDTC's planning committee website. So if you want to look at the details of what was proposed for changing, and again, this is draft, it is open for discussion. We'll be coming back to you in the month of July with a revision to kind of go through and hopefully approve at that time.
Sandy, Andrew Kreshik, is there a blur? Jen spoke on, a bit more of the focus, but where the score actually changes in the draft, will there be notation as to why or what the decision was to do that, whether to increase or decrease? Or
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. Are you saying, in the context of scoring a project, if we're giving a negative score?
No. So like, for example, under other environmental health benefits, where the first line item is project includes, and there's a lot of editing to it. The score had been 1 or 2, but the suggestion is to just make it 2 points. So where this actual score changes, is there going to be comments on what the thought was in making that score change?
I think, what, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, the idea behind or better organizing the scoring was so that a point value wasn't a 1 or a 2, that it was very clear to you folks and to anyone else that a 2 would be based on whatever that criteria was, and then a 1 would be based on whatever that criteria was. So the idea was to eliminate that sort of that subjectivity between what is a 1 and what is a 2. Is that right, Jen?
Yes, it was to make it more clear that, this is the criteria for 2 points, this is the criteria for 1 point.
Right.
Okay, and so the only place where that would exist, and it's defined differently, is under economic development, where you would have a tier structure of 0, 1, or 2 based upon the project elements.
Actually, we should change that to 2 points for the following. Maybe I can go back and revisit that and make sure that's correct.
And if it's helpful, Andrew, we can post the existing merit score sheet on the planning committee page so that you can just compare what it was to what we're proposing, just in case it's not entirely clear to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we can do that. And the other issue is with the scores is the total category score and subcategory scores. They did not change. The criteria may have changed, but the total did not.
Correct.
Okay, so this is still open for committee input, and we'll bring it up again at our next meeting, May 5th. So this is a running story that we can revisit for further discussion and review. And you also noted its guidance, nothing concrete.
Steve, this is Bob here. Okay, DOT will be providing, some written comments, so I don't want to belabor them here, but I still, when we get to project selection, it still fundamentally comes down to preservation versus broader scope type projects. And I'm still not sure that the scoring criteria help flush that out anymore the way that they currently are. Elements like user volumes of the facility or asset condition of the facility, just the preservation piece seems to be worth more than 5 points. So I will provide more comments, but I just still, at least from a preservation program perspective, I hope there's some more discussion to be had. That's all. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, definitely. We want to have a separate meeting with the DOT to kind of flush out some of the preservation issues, especially maybe defining what is preservation, say for say an overlay project and things like that. So we'll be contacting you and we'll talk to you separately in a separate meeting.
Yep. No, we appreciate that, Mike.
Thanks for keeping the committee right up to speed with all discussions on this. So important for safety and capacity for our region. Any further discussion from members on the project evaluation update? Just clarifications, what I see, some evolution. I think it's progress. Any other comments? Okay, we can move forward. Capital Coexist Traffic Safety Ambassador Mini Grant Program is next, item 8 on the agenda, and Jen Sponis will give us an overview. Jen?
Sure. So this year we announced the 6th round of Capital Coexist Traffic Safety Ambassador Grants, or a program that we call the mini grants. Well, we announced it in December 2020, so not quite this year, but they were due this year. We did expand the program to address problematic traffic safety trends based on the local road safety action plan. So Sandy and I worked together to make sure that the language in the solicitation for new grant applications was more broad and included more types of safety programs and projects. Just like in previous years, the program makes up to $5,000 available to local governments, first responders, nonprofits, and other organizations for traffic safety education and outreach. And we assembled an evaluation committee that consisted of CDTC staff, the New York State Department of Transportation, and the New York State Department of Health, and the Governor's Traffic Safety Commission. And we reviewed 7 project proposals. The request came in just over $21,000, and all of them were eligible and consistent with the goals of the program. So we approved funding for all of them. There was an asterisk next to the Albany Bicycle Coalition, just because they had their approval was pending some minor scope change, and they were able to accommodate that request. The second page of the handout shows projects from 2020 that were not able to be implemented because of the pandemic and the New York State on pause guidelines and regulations. So these are being rolled over from last year, and implemented this year.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions on this mini grant program? Worthy comments, discussion? Okay, thank you, Jen. Ready to move forward. Item 9 is 2021 Community Planning Technical Assistance Program solicitation. So this is a new opportunity. Sandy and Marcus de Leon on the Community Planning TAP. Who's first? Sandy?
Sure, I can kick it off. So we wanted to bring to your attention that we are reopening the technical assistance program for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. The guidelines are in the actually they're just now on your screens. The only minor change really is we added in a sample commitment letter to help sponsors in applying for the project, but all the basic criteria remain the same. We still, just for reference, last year we funded 8 projects ranging from comprehensive planning assistance to corridor safety analyses to development of EV parking guidelines for local zoning. So there's been a wide range of activities undertaken in the technical assistance program. We are going to continue the rolling solicitation this year. So we will be accepting applications until funding runs out through the beginning of December. That's also to account for the pandemic, and I think to also give communities some flexibility as things come up in the where they might need some help on a planning topic, that there's a resource available to them. So, we are bringing this for discussion. If there's any questions or comments about it, let me know. Otherwise, we will be making this available to everyone at the end of the week. And if Mark has anything to add, feel free.
Well, thank you, Sandy, for doing the update to the program guidelines. It's been a successful program. We're going to be entering our 4th year of offering the program, and we have a number of really good projects under our belt thus far. I think we're hitting the program goals of reaching communities that need some capacity assistance and also helping communities with a little extra assistance that they would need to advance a project or program that they want to start diving into. Now that we have a sort of depth and breadth of projects that we've been working on and diversity of projects, I think we've really are much better dialed in now in terms of program delivery and being able to satisfy the program timelines and what the clients need in terms of their project scope and other things. The effort, just as a snapshot, Sandy mentioned 8 projects this year. And I took a look at some of the budget numbers from what CDRPC's staff effort involved this past year. So we're looking at, just from CDRPC's perspective, around $50,000 in total staff effort that we've contributed, supported with UPWP funding, matched with CDRPC funding. This is just our side. So it's a significant annual contribution that we're giving back to communities and providing direct technical assistance. So I think in that regard, it's been a successful program, and we appreciate the planning committee's continued support of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Mark. Great cooperative, collaborative opportunity to advance our program region-wide. Any questions for Mark or Sandy at this time? Rolling solicitation is user-friendly. Move forward to the CDTC project delivery update with Jacob Beeman. Jacob, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. So we have a few project updates from our monthly consultant updates that we receive. First is the Town of Clifton Park Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, had construction obligated in February. Next, we have the City of Schenectady Francis Avenue over I-890 project with design approval granted back in January. And a few projects in the City of Rensselaer. The Pedestrian Safety Action Plan letting was held in February. And City of Rensselaer 3rd Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project had PS&E submitted also in February. And the City of Rensselaer South Street Bridge Replacement Project had right-of-way incidentals obligated also in February. Finally, we have the Schenectady County project, Knott Street and Balltown Road intersection safety improvements with PS&E submitted in March. So that's kind of the wrap up of our updates since we last met. For next month, I'll be reaching out to sponsors. We'll have 4 different sponsors this month, and instead of the typical 3 sponsors that I reach out to, the Town of Colony, Town of Edinburgh, Village of Scotia, and Town of Clifton Park. So keep an eye out for those emails from me, and I'll be just asking for updates on all of your active TIP projects that you have right now. Also wanted to note that Mike is showing our federal aid project tracking sheet that we always post online with meeting materials. We did a kind of a tweak the formatting of it a little bit. If you want to scroll down, Mike, to the bottom, basically what we did was this month, if you scroll back up just to where it says CDTA TIP project tracking sheet. So this month we received our updates, our annual updates from CDTA. And in doing that, we decided to kind of reformat the information that we include with CDTA projects, because for the most part, they are a little bit different than our kind of more road and bridge based projects that we deal with on the TIP. So you'll see we just kind of reformatted the CDA portion a little bit, pulled all the CDTA projects to the bottom of the tracking sheet, and include kind of a language description of each project on the right-hand side, instead of the typical kind of date of obligation updates that we see with our other projects. So just wanted to point that out. And of course, as always, encourage everyone to take a look at that spreadsheet and provide us with any updates on your individual projects, even in between our monthly updates that we may be reaching out to you for. So with that, I think, do we have Ross or someone from CDTA on the line to give an update on the Washington Western BRT project?
Yep, thanks, Jacob. Well, thanks to you and Melissa Shanley, our grants manager, for putting this together, because as Jacob was saying, really our projects don't necessarily fit the same format as many of the local municipalities. And just so you know, anything that has any sort of federal money attached to it obviously has to be put on a TIP. So there's a number of different projects there, but I'm going to now share my screen and give as best as I can, brief update on the Washington Western BRT, which is the largest project on that sheet. So just 1 second here. Dun, dun, dun. Let's just show the screen. All right, can everybody see the map?
Yes.
All right. So this is the purple line as it exists today. This has been built in phases, and that's what I'm going to go into now, which is the final phase is really what is going to happen next. But I want to go through everything that has happened over the years. So the first thing I'm going to go through is all of the site work that has been incrementally built throughout the years. The first set of site work that existed is where the purple line and the red line overlap. So if you look down at the corner, can you see my cursor? Hopefully. All right. So down here are all the stations where the site work has already been constructed, because it was constructed back when we built the red line. And when I say site work, anytime we do a BRT station, it's the cost really isn't the actual shelter and the pylon, which is sort of the totem that's next to it. The real cost comes in the infrastructure, and that's mostly pedestrian infrastructure and improvements, whether that's redoing sidewalks, adding traffic calming elements, pedestrian push buttons, things like that, other signal types of upgrades. So that occurred for the purple line back when the red line was built. The next, and as you can see next to it, I'm trying to put all of the different funding partners or funding sources that went to each one of these phases. It's not exhaustive, but really these are the main partners. So the next is the elements that were built in advance of the purple line, but had benefits to the existing local bus service. A lot of this came down to opportunities that presented themselves with partners. For example, SUNY Polytechnic, who wanted to have access to our bus service, but at that point we didn't have any safe location to locate stops. So luckily on that project, SUNY Polytechnic actually built us cutouts and pedestrian crossing of Fuller Road. Other examples include at Crossgates Commons and Crossgates Mall, which again improved service for pyramid companies who contributed to those projects. And the largest, which was funded partially from the HSIP and the BRT set aside, was the improvements we did at our Lark Library Station, which was basically a 3-block improvement of the intersections around Lark and Washington. That you can go to today and see, and obviously has a huge improvement for pedestrians, but for our bus services as well. Next in orange are the things that were built really over the last about year and a half, which were funded from the TAP program, as well as our BRT set aside, as well as contributions from UAlbany. And obviously, as every time I say the funding partners, I put CDTA first. I don't want to not say that CDTA funded these projects. We obviously did, but these are all of the different sources that came together. These are 2 projects that one benefits the local bus service today, which is the UAlbany downtown campus. We did a number of different improvements to allow all of our services to consolidate at Thurlow Terrace on Western Avenue. And if you go there today, we put in a center median, bus cutouts, really a huge improvement for the pedestrian environment and also placemaking. If you go to that station right now, the station obviously isn't off the shelter itself, but the station, the site work is all there, and you can see that improvement. It's really a great example of what CDTA does when we put in a BRT station. Next is at Harriman West E-Tech, so the new expansion of UAlbany onto the Harriman campus. We, in partnership with UAlbany and Office of General Services, traffic calm that roadway. Eventually there will be traffic signals up there, and also bus only. Today there's bus only roadways that allow our buses to go from the Harriman campus into the university at Albany. Those don't exist and aren't operating today because E-Tech isn't open, but they will be we hope by the end of this year. And lastly is the rest of the project, which isn't just site work. That's the key part if you look at the very bottom. This is really what makes BRT BRT, which is you have to buy the BRT buses. So those are the purple and silver buses that are going to be all articulated. We're doing an expansion of our Albany garage, which has started already today to house all of those buses. This is probably this is the largest expansion to one of our facilities in CDTA's history, which is funny because that what just wrapped up was the expansion of the Troy garage, which was needed to house the Blue Line buses. There's also the actual shelters themselves. So everywhere that was previously built site work wise now needs the actual BRT purple and silver shelters placed on top. Lastly is transit signal priority. That's actually something I should have talked about during, let's call it the green phase in 2015, 2018. The city of Albany upgraded all of its traffic signals on Washington and Western Avenue. Huge benefit for us is the fact that now all we have to do is add the TSP equipment. On the Blue Line, for example, we would actually have to go in and just redo. We redid in the city of Albany alone, I think about 8, 9, or 10 traffic signals where we fully replaced them and put in new signals. What's great about the Purple Line is the city of Albany had already done that on Washington and Western Avenue. So all we have to do is add in TSP. Now the rest of the project areas, if you can see the cursor here, this is actually our headquarters at 110 Waterville Avenue. That's going to be expanded. That's the Albany Garage. These are the different stations on Western Avenue that are going to have improvements. These larger circles here are where we're building a busway from essentially Fuller Road to Breviter. That will connect in and out to the Harriman West E-Tech campus. The U-Albany portion of the busway is out to bid now. And at some point, as Jeremy Smith had done in the past with the construction of the Blue Line for the River Corridor BRT, once this is up and going, we'll probably have a presentation from him on that. We'll also have improvements to the Crossgates Mall Road. This is to get our buses from Crossgates Mall Station out to the line and be able to work through that area as well. That includes a traffic signal at, a traffic circle at the Fuller Road alternate exit where it hits Crossgates Mall Road. So there's a lot here. I'm just supposed to give one quick update of one project, but I'm happy to ask any questions. I can do a more in-depth presentation in the future if needed. The key part is the final phase is being funded by Small Starts, and we're in the final steps of getting a signed grant agreement. The funding has been awarded, but as everyone knows, you need to cross the T's and dot the I's before you officially receive the funding, and we're hoping that will occur in the coming months. So with that, is there any questions about the Purple Line?
Excellent overview. Thank you, Ross. So any further discussion? I presume ridership's coming back presently and
slowly. Yep.
Good. We'll come to that in our status of planning later. Anything else on the Purple Line? The Red Line is a great success as BRT. It's our alternate to light rail, right? So no further discussion. We can move forward to the DOT project delivery schedule next. That'll be item 11 on our agenda. Is it Greg? Are you ready to give us an overview on DOT delivery?
I think Mike's going to bring it up on the screen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah. So really, last planning committee, we shared the draft version of the RD commitment list that, we have to focus on every year. And this represents the final combination of state and local let lists within the CDTC area. One thing to note is it's a robust local let program this year. I think I tallied 22 projects, local let projects this year. So it's going to be a very busy season. So and we appreciate everyone moving their projects forward. This was done in a lot of coordination with everybody, and we appreciate the multiple requests to verify your dates and costs. But that's the long and the short of it. Are there any questions for me on what's here?
Greg, I think I'd just like to ask or add for emphasis. I know previously we'd talk about red lights, green lights, that sort of review of this, and that was sort of a department sort of initiative. But this list now is a much wider distribution, even particularly to the chamber and the governor's office. A renewed emphasis on delivery, and I think that's why I appreciate the input. I know we've gone back and forth with this draft list a number of times if they weren't comfortable with the cost or schedule. But like Greg said, I mean, we do have a pretty robust local program for this upcoming year.
Any other questions? 7 on the DOT let list, and how many on the local? Let's see, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 20.
I tallied 22.
22 local let projects with the dates of letting and total construction. Can we add this to our planning committee website, Michael? Excellent intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it'll certainly be in the minutes of this meeting.
Okay, good.
We'll add it to the website also.
Great, yeah. It is robust. Any other questions or comments for DOT? Thank you, Bob and Greg.
No, you bet.
Thank you. All right, moving forward, I guess, if we're ready. That was item 11. Now 12 is status of CDTC planning activities, which is our staff reports. We got 5 staff ready to report, and Jacob is up first on the Ballston Spa Bike Ped Master Plan. Jacob?
Yep. Thanks, Steve. So projects moving forward. Last week, we held our second study advisory committee on April 1st, held that virtually to discuss our existing conditions report and go over kind of options for our first round of public involvement that's going to be coming up in a month or two. We then had our study area field walk with masks and social distancing, but a group of our study advisory committee members actually got out into the study area and walked the streets of the village of Ballston Spa to kind of gain some insight onto some problem areas and some areas of opportunity that we might be able to work into the project. Right now, the consultant team is, or the study advisory committee is working on reviewing the draft existing conditions report. And the consultant team is preparing, as I mentioned, for that first round of public involvement, likely going to take place sometime in May. Public involvement is going to be kind of a series of 3 different study focus groups. We're still trying to work out how we want to target those, whether it's going to be by location in the village or by a specific kind of community member type. So we're working through that right now, but then there'll be kind of a 4th and final wrap-up public meeting that we're hoping to try to integrate into some type of outdoor village event that'll really go over kind of the first part of the project and convey to the public our first assessment of existing conditions and ideas on potential recommendations. So project is moving forward. I'm going to post a link to the project website in the chat if anybody would like to check that out. So that's in the chat if you want to take a look. And that's all I have for the Ballston Spa study.
Great, thank you, Jacob. Any questions? We can move forward to 12B is the Manans Land Use Regulations Update. Rima will guide us on this. Rima, are you ready? Rima on? Michael?
She
Sorry,
was
hi,
on.
sorry.
There
it
she
just
is.
took
She
me-
was on.
Sorry, it just took me a minute to figure out how to unmute myself. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the contract has been executed. The Technical Advisory Committee has met with Chase and Companies, who is the consultant team that was chosen. And we're currently in process of scheduling the study advisory committee meeting kickoff. Yeah, some of the things that we're working on right now is putting together the public participation plan for the project, and looks like we're going to be developing a sort of do-it-yourself field visit. So we don't have a big group together because of COVID, but we're going to do it sort of on our own with some guided materials and a questionnaire, so we can get that feedback, that information and engagement from the steering committee members. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Rima. Any questions on the land use regulations? It's an important update. And next on the 12C agenda is Scotia Downtown Connections Plan. And Andrew will guide us on this. Andrew, are you ready?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. The Scotia Downtown Connections Plan linkage study is progressing well. The first study advisory committee meeting was held. There was great attendance from local stakeholders, a lot of great feedback obtained from that meeting. The consultant has prepared a draft website and shared that for review and feedback, and we've received some comments already that are being integrated into the draft website. And the consultant is also preparing the existing conditions report the first piece of the overall final reports. And we are working with them and with Village of Scotia to prepare data for that report. So the study is progressing well. It's on schedule and it's going well so far.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions on Scotia Downtown Connections? Andrew has the next item, 12D as well, local bridge preservation report.
Yes. Hello again, everyone. Sorry, I'm moving my notes around just a moment. So this study is also progressing well. We are on a slightly accelerated schedule from what we had originally planned due to the Bridge New York solicitation coming out. So the consultant has accelerated their bridge inspection slightly because of this. Field visits are complete in all counties except for Rensselaer County. We're reaching out to Rensselaer County to see if they have any bridges that they want a detailed inspection performed on, or if they have any bridges that they intend to prepare Bridge New York applications for. So if anyone from Rensselaer County is on the call, feel free to reach out to me after Planning Committee. The consultant, CDM Smith, has completed all of the field visits in the other 3 counties, though, and they are preparing reports from those field visits to distribute to the local bridge stakeholders. And CDM Smith is also putting the finishing touches on a draft study report as well. They previously shared the existing conditions data spreadsheet with us, with the local bridge committee, and they are now in the process of incorporating that into the draft study report. So this study also on schedule, progressing well.
Thank you, Andrew. Could you share just a brief executive summary to highlight the number of bridges, and any significant issues there too? Just a brief 1 or 2 liner. Can you give us a quick summary for the intelligence of the board?
Sure. We had intended, with regards to the field visits, we had intended to do about 20 to 25 field visits. About 15 have been completed so far. There are a few more that could be done in Rensselaer County if the county is interested. Did you want to know the total number of bridges in this study? Because I can look that up for you as well.
Only if it's handy. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as planners, we always like to keep the high altitude view in mind. And if I recall, was it 200, 220? How many bridges are we talking about? And was it roughly half need attention?
Right. Yeah.
That's
About half of
question,
the bridges were below the condition threshold to warrant field investigation. There are 377 bridges in the master workbook here that are being investigated in total, and of those, about half were below the identified condition threshold for further investigation. So roughly half of them will receive work treatment recommendations and cost estimates, and then of those, the ones we're working with the local bridge committee to identify a subset for field investigation as well. So we've done about 15 field visits, and we intend to do a few more.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions for discussion on local bridge preservation?
Steve, this is Joe Semino with CHA. Can I ask a question of Andrew?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, Andrew. Just a question as it relates to the inspection materials that CDM, did you say CDM Smith is the lead on that?
Yep, CDM Smith and their sub-consultant are doing field visits, yes.
As it relates to some of the applications, the type of inspection report, you said they're going to be reaching out to the locals who have applications going in for Bridge New York. Go ahead.
Yeah, some of the local bridge stakeholders, when we were identifying bridges for the detailed field investigations, they already knew of some of their bridges that needed attention that they had intended to pursue Bridge New York funds on. So they were prioritized for field visits.
Okay, so CDM will be providing them directly some of that feedback on their investigations.
That's right, yes.
Okay, understood. Okay, great.
Yep, and if you know of any bridges that any local agencies are interested in pursuing Bridge New York funding on, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to work with the project team to make sure that we can provide all the information we can to assist with preparing the application.
Yeah, there are a number of consultants who've been selected to help with the application. So
right,
if we can, we can send you our list certainly, and if there's any, data that could help in the application that we could obtain, from that CDM study, that would be very helpful for our consultants. So
okay,
I would be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good overview. Very important program. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Lastly is item 12E, the ADA self-evaluation transition plan for pedestrian infrastructure. And Carrie can guide us on this item. Carrie, are you ready?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Last year, we hired the Chasing companies to conduct municipal transition plans for us and for the municipalities. We funded the town of Glenville and city of Saratoga Springs last year. And we're just finalizing the report for Glenville and still working on finalizing the condition data collection on Saratoga Springs. But we were able to reopen the solicitation this year. The deadline is currently April 30th. So we're looking for additional municipalities that would like us to complete a transition plan of their pedestrian infrastructure for them.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions or discussion on the ADA transition pedestrian infrastructure review? Another very important area. Questions or discussion? We can move forward. Next is item 13, status of planning activities around the committee board. First up is CDRPC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I able to share my screen real quickly? I just wanted to have a quick update on one of the projects that we worked on.
Just made you co-host, Mark.
Oh, I will be responsible. With great privilege comes awesome responsibility. I'll be responsible with it. All right, 1 second. Here we go.
Be polite. Come on now.
So thank you to CDTC and CDTA for giving us some data for our COVID recovery dashboard. This is primarily an economic recovery dashboard, but as we know, mobility data is an indicator of economic activity. And thank you also to the airport for providing excellent airport employment data. So we took on regional mobility as a component of this regional recovery dashboard funded by CARES Act funding. So you can see the dramatic changes in employments and cargo tonnage, and also the daily traffic volumes that CDTC was able to compile there, and CDTA's ridership numbers. We will continue to monitor changes in mobility as we progress and emerge from the pandemic. One of the more interesting data sets in our dashboard is the change of address data. So we requested from the United States Postal Service which addresses had changed from New York City counties to capital region counties. And you'll notice a significant spike with the emergence of the pandemic in March of last year, continuing basically over historic trends through January 2021. So we'll continue to monitor this situation and continue to see whether this is a blip caused by the pandemic or a new trend of people coming out of New York City and moving into the capital district, because as we know, it's a great place to live, work, and play, and with a reasonable cost of living. So we'll continue to monitor this thing. Another update is that CDRPC continues with its spring webinar series. So just visit our website and sign up if you need planning and zoning board credits. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing.
Knowledge is power, and this is a great tool for everyone on the committee and all jurisdictions in our region. Thank you, Mark. It's great leadership you have there sharing this data. Thank you. Any questions on regional planning activities? Anything new on the census, Mark?
The census is mired in politics at the moment, and I guess I'm characterizing that incorrectly. It's going through an additional level of scrutiny in terms of the methodology and procedures that were followed in 2020, given the pandemic and other factors that went into making the count in 2020 unique. So a variety of institutions and non-governmental agencies are taking a look at that methodology in advance of the census issuing preliminary numbers.
In-migration certainly looks positive. I hope that can be reflected in one of the updates. That is very positive. We were the 46th largest consolidated metropolitan statistical area. I like to use that in grant applications. Maybe we'll bump up a notch. Do you think we can make 45th? Just curious.
We can only hope, Steve.
That's right. Thank you. That's very positive. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions around the committee? Next up, CDTA. Is Ross ready? You on, Ross?
Sure. And actually, this is a great segue because Mark had just shown the ridership that we've been going through, and I think we've been, every time I talk, it's continues to be a roller coaster. There was a huge drop in the beginning, and then we came back when we had to turn off our fare boxes for rear door boarding. Then when we turned that back on, it went back down. And then we hit that second wave, and we were consistently below 30,000 rides per weekday. So, in 2019, the average was about 55. And actually, right before the pandemic, we were averaging about, I think it was about 60. And so now, is good news is with things reopening, Steve, you were saying there is somewhat of a recovery happening, or at least it's noticeable in our ridership, because in the last few days, at least in the last week or so, we've started to top 30,000 per weekday again. So good news. We don't know how much of a roller coaster it's going to keep going, or if it's a slow and steady increase. Obviously, that's what we hope. The biggest impact for us will be, actually, we won't know until September. When the schools come back and how the schools come back, because most of the schools make up a huge portion of our overall ridership, probably about 25 or 30%. Hence the reason the purple line is the purple line, because of UAlbany and St. Rose's colors. So we'll see. We're hoping it'll continue to increase. It is a good sign, though, that it hasn't plateaued. It's actually inching back up. So I'll report next month on where we're at.
Any questions for Ross? Thank you, Ross. Next up is DOT. Bob or Greg? Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Just a few things quick. We're still, the solicitation for Bridge New York is out. And again, just want to emphasize the cost estimation. We're running into some issues as plans are developed for some of the earlier rounds of the projects, with the cost and the overruns being borne by the municipality. So again, when you're working for those estimates, Steve, you mentioned the Skyway. It is under construction. The ramp was closed on Monday here, so it's nice to see that. A lot of partnering went on to get that done. In terms of DOT staff, the commuting, telecommuting will continue to at least July 2nd. We're at 25% in the office, and I think we'll continue to build that up. Most folks are in at least a couple days a week now. If Deb Lolick from our staff, if you've dealt with her, Deb is retiring next month, and so we're transitioning. A lot of the agreement work, state local agreements, are done by Deb, and we're getting some quick training and assignment to others in the group there. So the Troy Manans, the 378, the study, we're almost complete with our scope rework in consultation with Federal Highway. I hope to have that out by the end of the month, if not into May, but much more of a scoping focus and a high level public input, identifying major environmental hurdles to a particular alignment, and then working with CDTC and the regional model, sort of some high level traffic analysis. So, like I said, we hope to see that out shortly. Pete Mealis, the Region 1 construction engineer, has retired, and Craig Blake is now the acting construction engineer. As you know, it's seen the news. I mean, the state budget, apparently there's an agreement on that. I guess right now the governor's given some sort of presentation on it. So there are a number of things in there. For this current year, the CHIPS allocations were restored to at least 95%. There was a quick payment, additional one for this month that some folks had sent in, but it would still roll over to the normal June payment. And apparently the budget does have another $100 million in there this year for CHIP. So, and there's also discussion of a program for projects on state touring routes in the municipality where it's signed as a state highway, but it's actually the municipal jurisdiction. Although sometimes I know in the urban areas that it could be an opportunity to get some investment there. So those are the things that are going on. End of report unless there are questions.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions on DOT? Development and planning progress. Next up is the Thruway Authority. Let's see, who's from Thruway? Is it?
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Tim Wainwright.
Thank you, Tim.
Hey, we're in the process of transitioning from our winter staffing to our summer staffing. So that's one of the big changes happening for us on the construction scene. Our all electronic toll collection project is gearing back up after its winter shutdown. And so, around the Albany area, you'll start to see some more of the toll booths being torn down. That's about it for today, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions on the Thruway Authority? Statewide progress, planning and development. Nice smooth ride. All right. Albany County Airport Authority is next. Here I come. Very good. So we are seeing a restoration fairly consistent. I hope and think it's a trend, knock on wood. We are at about 3,000 passengers per day, where a year ago we were as low as 47 in April. That was the all-time low. 5,000 per day would be the norm of departing passengers ticketed here. So that's a very positive indicator. People are anxious to travel. I personally traveled to Baltimore, Atlanta, and back through Midway. All planes were 100% full, not a spare seat anywhere. Very good masking, 100% masking throughout. And police report our airport, I believe, is the cleanest. All airports are clean, and the aircraft air is highly filtered, changed over several times a minute. So the hygiene and sanitation is state of the art and significantly advanced in all areas. So if you're vaccinated, I guess the trend is everyone's feeling free to travel, and there's testing available here at the airport to any and all people. It's a rapid test, saliva testing. We're advancing. We've had sanitized escalator rails throughout, and we just awarded touchless buttons on all 19 elevators. So we're pushing the envelope and advanced technology, state of the art, touchless everywhere you go. You shouldn't need to touch anything. Automated doors, automated elevator buttons. So this is good technology that is coming into place here at Albany. We're very proud to be a national leader among clean airports, supporting interstate and even international travel. Development side, we're pushing about $5 million in taxiway rehabilitations, advancing studies for new air cargo hangars. The master plan is a big topic that we're working on daily. There'll be our 20-year vision statement advancing, and we're holding a lot of interviews with the stakeholders, tenants, pilots, all interested parties, and there'll be another second public meeting. We had one public meeting in February. We're all the second public meeting, both the Regional Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committees this late June or July, just firming that up now. So with that, I would welcome any questions and get ready for Tony Vassell, if you're still there, Tony, on the Port
Yes, I am. Yes.
Excellent, Tony.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Second quarter of last year implemented what we call the winter port marketing concept. that's attempting to develop business during the closure of the Great Lakes. We were successful in getting 2 ships, one from Brazil, one from Mexico, which totaled about 60,000 short tons of slab steel destined to auto facilities in Canada and the United States. And those 2 vessels in January and February were in port a total of 20 days. And our longshoremen, Federal Marine Terminals, and our people worked from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. And that was during that cold spell. So they did a magnificent job, and we're hopeful that we can repeat that and build on that next year. Another item, what's going on at port right now, we have a ship in with 32 wind towers for an onshore wind project in Western New York. We have 2 pulp vessels coming in import next week with product for napkins and paper towels. We had a scrap steel ship at export with scrap steel for Turkey. And we have 2 heavy lift project cargo ships with heavy lift project cargo destined, one to Bangladesh and one to India. Lastly, offshore wind. Mentioned at our February 3 meeting that we had been successful in working with Equinor, and we're going to be building a 600,000 square foot assembly facility in conjunction with them and a company out of Canada called Marmon and another company out of Denmark called Wellcom. And what's going to happen is these are the wind towers for 2 projects for the state of New York, the Empire Wind Project and the Beacon Wind Project off of Long Island Sound. So the towers will be placed horizontally on a ship or a barge, moved down to the Hudson, either to Brooklyn or another facility, possibly right to the site. And we should start preparing the ground fourth quarter this year and start building and construction sometime in 2022. So that's the activity going on at the port.
Offshore wind, that's a big story, getting good press. That's exciting, Tony. Thank you for the update.
Hey, Tony.
Questions?
Yeah, just a quick question, Andrew Kreshick. Did the blockage of the Suez Canal have any impact on the port?
With us, no, because we do not have a container barge service or a direct service, but it has certainly hampered a lot of other business. It's even impacted the West Coast further because people started shifting vessels. And just as information, if you canceled a ship that was supposed to go through Suez and it went down the east coast of Africa, first of all, it would have had to deal with pirates. And then around the Cape and then back up, it's approximately 5,500 miles. And it would take, at 25 miles an hour, it would take about 8 to 10 days for that voyage. And the fuel cost would be $300,000. So some of the vessels were moved around through the Cape, South Africa. That's a lot of comment.
Thank you.
Just
Okay, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, I got to say, I'm really disturbed by your profile picture. Anyone that's seen an electrocution would know that's a bad idea what you got there. Is that you in the picture?
No, that's, just to make sure people are paying attention.
Yeah, we're paying attention. That's painful. Don't do this. Anyway, thank you, Tony. I'm sorry to digress off the tangent here. Anything else for Tony on the Port District and important marine freight to advance our regional economy? Local planning initiatives will be next. Local officers ready to address any significant planning developments at this time. I think we have an open floor on item G. We have a few municipalities on the committee.
Steve, I have some news for the committee.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, there is going to be a staff change this summer. Yesterday I announced to staff that I'm retiring in July.
Wow.
So just to give you some notice, I've talked to a couple people already, but told staff yesterday, mid-July will be my last date at CDTC. With over 30 years of service in the system. The other day I calculated that because I represented Albany County, that I attended 24 years worth of planning and policy board meetings for Albany County, and the 9 years here as the executive director. So
Was
many
it worth
years.
it?
Every meeting was worth it, Mark. Every single one.
Congratulations, Mike.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Boy, that's quite a change. Wow. Thanks, Michael. All the best. Hope you keep in touch.
Yep.
Any word on your future transition plan or succession plan?
The as what happened, 9 years ago when I was hired, the administrative and financial subcommittee is in charge of recruiting and hiring. So the notice, the advertisement will go out toward the end of this week. And the administrative and finance committees, is made up of the mayor. Mayor Sheehan is the chair, Carmen Vasil is vice chair, Pat Barnes, Joe Landry from Schenectady, Tom Richardson, and Tom Warner. So most of them actually were involved in my hiring 9 years ago, but they'll be doing the same process this year.
Thanks for keeping us informed. Big news. Very
Congratulations.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sure the whole committee. Anyway, look forward to our next few meetings. But any other comments around the committee on planning and development activities? Going once, going twice. At 11:25, I think we're ready to say our next meeting will be May 5th of this board. Before then, we have an April 13th Bike Ped Advisory and April 29th Regional Operations and Safety Advisory Committee. Any other meetings, Mike? We'll see you in about just less than a month. May 5th is our next meeting, and we'll do a motion to adjourn. Any closing remarks? Best to Michael. Motion to adjourn by the chair. Second. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. We'll keep in touch. And
thank you, Steve.
Keep it moving forward. All the best.
Yeah.
Happy
Thanks,
trails.
Steve. Congrats, Mike.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Mike.